Welcome to our latest edition of the Vitrina podcast. We're privileged to have Jurga Zilinskiene, who's joining us from all the way from the UK today, founder and CEO of Guildhawk, which is a localization company, and we'll hear a lot more about Guildhawk's services and its vision and its future outlook. But just a quick introduction to the Vitrina podcast. The Vitrina podcast is essentially for industry professionals in the entertainment supply chain. Our key role is to expose the most innovative and the most on-the-move companies inside the supply chain. And the key aspect is to really shine the spotlight on their services, their specializations, and the great work that they're doing within the industry. Jurga, it's a pleasure to have you today with us. Welcome.
It is lovely to be here, and thank you so much for inviting.
Fantastic. And your voice is going across to almost 72,000 folks within the entertainment supply chain. They're all sort of business leaders, across different dimensions of what the industry does. And just to get us started, would love to actually hear a little bit about your background, and then also how Guildhawk actually happened.
My background is quite unusual in the sense that I started my career in law and economics, and during that time I progressed into languages. So I discovered languages, and that's how I ended up actually being in the language industry itself. It is a fascinating place. It is global. It is challenging. It is for curious minds. But at the same time, when I discovered language industry itself and what it does and how it enables businesses to trade globally, I also discovered technology. And I became obsessed by technology. So we're talking going back in 2001, 2003. And in the sense that I became so intrigued by the possibilities that I learned how to code.
Oh, wow.
And actually, my tutor who helped me, I just did not have the time to go back to university to learn because I was running business and I needed a system. And I was quite good with computers. So I thought, okay, if I just learn to do something in the meantime at interim level and then just get some knowledge. And when I discovered the world of computing, there was no return. So my tutor came from India. So she worked with me for 6 months, and then she left me to implement my first system on the network 6 months later. So it was an amazing journey. And since then, I never looked back.
Fascinating. I mean, just that big sort of crossover from law and legal affairs to technology and coding. That's fascinating. And also wanted to understand how did Guildhawk happen. There was also a question before we go to Guildhawk. I was reading up about your knighthood, that you were knighted in 2019. Tell us a little bit about that. That's with all the folks that I interview and I meet, this is perhaps a standout sort of achievement. So I'm really, really curious about this one.
Yes, it was a surprise, and it was a great honor to be honored by Her Majesty the Queen with an MB. It came as a surprise of the same year as our company also won another award from Her Majesty, was Queen's Award for International Trade. In the same year, I received a letter from the palace saying that they are putting me forward for the MBE, and if I will accept this great honor. And of course I did. And truly remarkable. It shows really how I would say the institutions value business contribution, and they recognize me personally for the work I was doing to promote international trade globally, because in 2006 and 7, I've organized the very first trade mission to my native Lithuania from the United Kingdom, which happened to be first in history. And I was doing some more work in the United States and Southeast Asia and other places as well, not just promoting Guildhawk, but promoting British businesses as well. So as a result, I received the recognition from Her Majesty. Similarly with our business, because we're trading globally, and equally when we trade globally, we're not just about doing business for our ourselves, but also how we can help our clients or talent or anyone else in that matter, bringing businesses more closely together.
Fascinating. I mean, that is a wonderful, wonderful story. And look, the moment you mentioned global, you're in the right business in terms of translations and localization. And I can tell you that with all the folks that we meet at Vitrina, there is just so much of demand right now, as a lot of content is crisscrossing continents and countries and crossing borders. So, but congratulations on that achievement. I'd love to sort of know a little bit about then Guildhawk and how that journey sort of started off.
Yeah, so with Guildhawk, we started as a language business, managed services. So we worked with a lot of organizations, and we also had the technology arm, but was primarily working on the processes, but also machine learning a little bit. As you can imagine, it's early on, although the machine translation existed since 1950s. So it's not exactly an immediate innovation. It's an evolution, I would say, of machine translation, but we always worked in that space. So we started working with corporations, with quite a few legal entities, but very quickly we were discovered by creative industry as well. So because the work that we're doing is not just about a simple, straightforward translation, that requires much more work in order to understand the audience, what our clients try to indicate in terms of their message. And then when we go into creative industry, it becomes even more exciting because, as you can imagine, art is consumed so differently in different countries. And how do we actually project those messages in a way that it still does justice to the author, but at the same time is appealing to different markets as well, culturally, or just talking about simply understanding what innuendos mean.
Yes, absolutely. And there are just so many phrases and idioms and even certain humor aspects which are very nuanced to a particular culture and to a particular market or country. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that point. Is media one of the verticals that you actually sort of serve? And what are the other verticals? How does the business look like for you from that perspective?
Yeah, so media is one of the verticals that we work with. Other verticals are quite a few, I would say, diverse organizations. But there is a component of probably joint DNA in terms of organizations that care for their brand and the message people planet. They are really wanting to make sure that they engage people globally, whether their client base or their staff. So we're talking about some very high-end retail organizations or companies in engineering industries where life and death situation matter. And of course, that message has to be absolutely crisp in terms of the communication, and it's not just about them bringing their staff to the required knowledge base, but also compliance, because sometimes when you're operating in some areas, there are different requirements by various countries in terms of compliance and making sure that safety is observed by everybody. And of course, businesses carry the liability. So therefore, having everything available in a native language is key to the businesses. And so there's compliance component there, but also there's an opportunity. So we work with so many different organizations where they said, okay, we'll just be operating in an English speaking market because we don't have the language capability. And then when they team up with people like Guildhawk, all of a sudden those opportunities appear absolutely possible and attainable to them.
Right, right. And some of the challenges that you're seeing within the industry from just the number of languages that are now sort of coming up, within the entertainment sector, how do you characterize the last few months and quarters? We have seen, especially with streaming, a lot of those borders and boundaries have really collapsed.
Yeah, so it has. Of course, we have main leading languages, which are European languages, because we have the biggest depositories. And in order to train algorithms and have the data lakes that are more mature, so we're talking about these languages. And there are some rare languages that are still emerging when it comes to application with the technology. So what it is interesting to see the languages such as from the Southeast Asian Chinese dialects emerging now because of the share volume and the investment as well that is happening in China and Southeast Asia. So of course that is the new emergence that is happening now. But of course then we see Latin America Latin America also is growing in terms of commercial capabilities, language capabilities, and other components that are very, very important. And businesses are looking to capitalize on the opportunities in those areas as well. Because as you can imagine, from the economic point of view, that what we have now in Europe and more developed markets, they become a bit more stagnant, and businesses are looking for opportunities, and those opportunities are still emerging in some of them well emerged markets, but still not fully capitalized on.
That's right. That's right. I was actually curious, Jurga, about the model that you have relating to international expansion. So, you talked about LATAM, or you talked about some of the non-European sort of countries, including, let's say, Southeast Asia, China, so on. How's the model for your company? Is it partnerships driven? Do you have your own local talent in some of these markets? Or is it still sort of early stages for you to enter into these countries and markets?
No, it's not an early stage. We have established partnerships already. So
Okay.
we have partnerships that with other organizations that we're working with, and also we have some agents that we're working in different countries as well. So it's a mixed model and seems to be working very, very well. Our intention is to continue with this model because end of the day, we prefer to work with organizations that understand local markets. So
Right.
for us, it's so much easier and easier for the clients as well to deal with somebody locally.
Got it. Got it. Fascinating. And then in terms of which countries and markets are most exciting for you to sort of enter into it as 2025 draws closer?
As I mentioned, Latin America is very exciting for us because we're already operating in that space and we have quite a few different clients there already. And there's a huge amount of focus in that area, and also Southeast Asia. So we have additional attention to this part of the world as well. And it's very exciting opportunities there.
I think Latin America and South America, English, Portuguese, Spanish are in any case very, very strong. And that connection between Europe and LATAM is actually pretty interesting. You can actually sort of repurpose a lot of your talent, I'm sure, in those three languages.
Yes, absolutely. We can capitalize on the knowledge, European knowledge. However, it is important to note that Latin America has its own style of communication.
That's right.
And for us, it's very important to reflect that because we cannot go in and just expect people to operate in a similar way. Of course, there are some similarities, but actually, sometimes even we say culture changes if you look from city to city, leave alone
Yes.
from country to country or region to region. So we have to be very sensitive about these differences if we are serious about success.
That's so true, actually, and I completely echo that aspect. Between just I mean, I'm based out of San Francisco, and just the San Francisco Los Angeles differences. I mean, it's still in California, but it's legendary in terms of how culturally different those two cities are. Yurga, I wanted to sort of also ask you. There is a lot of emphasis on AI and just a lot of innovation that can actually happen, especially with LLMs and with languages, right? With a lot of stuff that's coming out genuinely. How do you see that aspect, and how's that impacted your business? What the plans are from an AI perspective?
Actually, it's amazing what's happening now, and people do ask this question a lot, especially with emergence with GPT technologies. I said, goodness, this has never been more exciting than ever before because all of a sudden we do not have to explain what we're doing about large language models because most of the time before, I would say the time when we had OpenAI entering the market so very quickly, and we worked with these technologies well before it was launched into the global market because of our collaboration with the universities, because we have been working on some emerging technologies and we were familiar with GPT, I would say 2 or 3 years before it was, or maybe even longer before it was actually launched, and some other emerging technologies that are about. So we knew what to expect. Of course, the launch was a little bit shocking because nobody was giving any notice. So we knew what was coming up, and even us ourselves were a bit shocked how it actually entered the market without any warning, how GPT actually works in terms of the data processing, that it is not necessarily something like Google that will give you a result based on something else. This is generative artificial intelligence. This is not necessarily a reference intelligence. And I think those kind of misunderstandings maybe was a little bit disadvantageous to some people. But now we're understanding a little bit more, and really lovely to see how it's getting deployed now, how people are using it and looking at opportunities, but also the limitations. And there are many, absolutely many. Yes, we're just at the beginning of something very exciting, but there are plenty of limitations. And one of them being absence of good quality information based on which models can learn. Because
Right.
models need to learn. They're just like humans. They need textbooks. They need to understand what information they're processing. End of the day, we call it intelligence, but in reality it's a computation, it's artificial computation. And what we have probably better referencing now, different models, they're faster. However, it still requires a lot of human management. And that's where linguists with skills and understanding of specific culture or industry knowledge, they are absolutely priceless, and they need to continue evolving together with the technology, because there's no way technology will replace a human in the way that we operate. So therefore, I believe that technology will continue giving us opportunity to evolve and create something new. Therefore, the human brain and human intelligence will continue to lead, but just with new tools.
I completely echo that aspect. It is evolving. It's evolving very quickly, and I think the applications that are coming out of these are also evolving very, very rapidly. We're seeing a tremendous amount of innovation within the entertainment sector. One other question which I had was relating to the companies that you work with in media. Is it more on the studio side? Is it more on streamers, broadcasters? How would you sort of characterize the current relationships? And where is the ambition? Where do you want your company to sort of really go in terms of strengthening some of those bonds within media?
So the type of companies that we work with, specifically in the media sector, would be actually companies that produce musicals and plays. We work with authors. So we actually translated quite a few musicals that probably quite a few of your audience would know, like Grease and Cats and Ghost and The Producers.
Wow.
So we work with Universal Studios. So we do a lot of creative work. And that requires not just translation itself, but we need to do the localization. We need to make sure that, as I earlier mentioned, adaptation of content that is fit for the audience as well, and also going to make sure that it goes with the musical score,
Wow.
because sometimes can be a correct translation, but not necessarily going to rhyme. So we have to find alternatives, as you can imagine. For technology, it is impossible. Of course, it can make suggestions, I would say, because it can help you. But in the meantime, it is for human ear to decide what sounds will actually go with a particular music or song. Also, in addition to that, we work a lot with creative organizations where they produce advertisement campaigns for different big brands
Right.
that launch global campaigns, including some media outlets as well that require either very quick translation, or they require some interpreting, or they require some dubbing or voiceovers for their materials as well. So the majority of the work that we do is very much creative, and that's where Guildhawk stands out. That's what our clients say. So they said, we've had that some of the clients saying we are the best in the world. So there we go. I know that lots of people try to say that, but at least our clients say this, so which is nice, because we had some of the clients we worked in the creative industry for 10, 15 years. Actually, we are venturing out into the songs as well now, which
Oh,
is going
wow.
to be another very exciting project that we're looking forward to
Fascinating. This is
working on.
this is really exciting. I mean, the usual sort of big body of work that we see in localization is in documentaries and into current affairs. These are essentially very predictable text, and you actually sort of see it dubbing slightly more easier in those areas. musical is really quite incredible sort of achievement. So congratulations on that piece. I think this is really, really innovative and quite a nice niche and specialization.
It is
Fascinating.
indeed. But even if you look at movies as well, so I think the creation of movies scripts, for example, again, so we require human input. So it's not just about translating the script. It's also, as I said, it just cannot put enough emphasis on adaptation. And of course, the requirement in the creative industry of changing requirements in terms of the type of titles and how they presented. And there are some limitations as well that are coming into the markets as well that our organizations are very much aware of. And also, I think the other exciting area where we're venturing out now a lot in book translation as well. And book translation that we already worked quite closely with a lot of different writers and authors, and some of them are very well known authors. We had again relationship for quite a few years, so we translated. Some of them come back and when they write a book, I don't know how they do it, but they write a book every quarter or every 6 months, and they are amazing reads as well. But in the meantime, if you really think at all, there are so many books that are waiting to be translated.
Yes.
And we're looking at the way how can we actually make it happen. So we're working with some partners to perhaps being able to translate books. Maybe not, they will not be a Shakespearean level.
Yes.
However, they at least will give you an idea. For example, there are so many Chinese books that I would love to read that they have not been translated. And also the same, some of them Middle Eastern books and some books in Africa that actually are waiting to be translated and discovered as well. And not talking about the music as well, how much music we're talking about around the world, how wonderful it would be to understand the lyrics.
That's right. That's right. Such an important point about books. One of the things that we saw this year is Netflix and Amazon Prime actually had the record number of book adaptation deals and book optioning deals over the last couple of quarters. So again, books is definitely a big source of inspiration for a lot of stories to actually sort of be birthed as either movies or TV series in this industry. So again, that's an exciting area for sure, for sure.
Mm.
Um,
Yes, it is. And also what we launched our, at the moment we just work with partners, but as of January will be available in the market, our first Guy SaaS product that we
mhm.
have created that can be customized to customer needs to meet exactly what they're looking for. And there's also a standalone standard option for people just to use it for standard requirement. And this particular engine has a precision inbuilt in it. And we worked on it for over nearly 10 years now. And it evolved and together with times, and it is taught by professionals. What we're talking about, taught by professional linguists. So it's a
Right.
very different approach to your typical machine translation. And it will continue evolving as we evolve, as I said, building new tools for experts. And our linguists love working with these tools already. So they are reporting that it is helping their productivity immensely.
Fascinating. Fascinating. And then, we are in December. I mean, the year is about to end, and a new year is about to start. My last question was really relating to the outlook that you have for 2025. I know for all of us in the entertainment sector, the last couple of years have been pretty tough. There's been a lot of turmoil relating to, strikes, there've been some slowdown. Production financing has been in short supply. But whoever that I've met in the last few days is very optimistic about 2025. I just wanted to understand, how is the new year being welcomed in your company?
We're very excited about 2025. As I mentioned about our AI translation engine, which is called Guy Translate.ai. So it's spelled as GAI.
Yeah. All right. Right.
So very excited about this because this will help businesses to transform how they are communicating and how it will bring together more nations and we understand each other better. So
Mhm.
it is ability to democratize our communication. And of course, we will continue working on our creative projects that I mentioned and pushing boundaries. And we also deploying, I probably did mention, we work with multilingual avatars that actually provide instructions. So instead of people reading some boring manual or something like this, now all of a sudden it comes alive. So it's not, again, taking a job from a creative, but it's allowing people to actually consume information in their own language, but also in a more entertaining way, as opposed to just simply reading. So for us, it's very important to continue helping our clients with their vision of expansion as well and opening those new opportunities. And we're traveling with them. We're traveling across the globe, and we are working very closely with we have a lot of clients in the United States of America as well. So it's actually our award that we received from Her Majesty was about our trade with the United States. So we do have a lot of clients in the region. So I travel a lot to the United States. So we'll continue our relationship there, whilst of course we're expanding in some other regions too.
Fascinating. This is super exciting. On behalf of Vitrina, I definitely want to wish the new launch massive success and very successful 2025. Jurga, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights.
Thank you very much, Atul, and thank you so much for inviting me. And likewise, I'm wishing you a prosperous 2025 with many more amazing podcasts that you are creating. And it's amazing to see that you are promoting wonderful cohesion across the world. Thank you so much for inviting.
Thank you.